Dun, dun, dun. And we're live.
Hooray!
I think. So I think we're live. We're from a new location at my house today, downstairs. And I'm joined, as always, by the lovely Caitlin from Kitty G. And we're going to be talking about our Wellcome Book Prize books from 2014 today. So if you didn't know, that me and Caitlin have set ourselves the challenge of reading the winner of every Wellcome Book Prize plus one of the shortlist titles, and in some months those shortlist titles will be the same, and in some months those shortlist titles will be different. So some months we'll be talking about just 2 books, and sometimes there will be 3, and I think in one case there might be 4, but I'm not sure about that one.
We're going wild in one of the months.
We did go wild.
Yeah.
We decided to read different. I don't know, I can't remember, but there might be a wild one coming up. But this month it was 2 of the same books that we decided to read, but we have had a bit of a hiatus on this because the 2 books that were cropped up for 2014 were sort of over 700 pages each, I think, or at least over 500 pages each.
Yeah, they were long.
Being 800 or something, wasn't it? So it's taken us a bit longer, and I'll explain as well why when we get to the second book, which is the winner, why that one took me a lot longer than Caitlin anyway.
It took me longer than a normal book as well. So
we'll talk about that one in a minute, but I actually DNF'd the one that Caitlin's about to talk about.
With Eleanor. Every Welcome Book Prize, I think we've DNF'd one or the other between us.
This one is the Inconvenient. No, it wasn't. Was it the
Inconvenient People? And it's by Sarah Wise.
I'll let you talk about it first, and then I'll tell you why I DNF'd it.
Okay, so this is a non-fiction, and it's based largely in Victorian times, sort of featuring lots of different cases of people who were diagnosed as lunatics in Victorian era, and each of them was diagnosed by different people and in different situations. Some of them it was legitimate and they probably were a bit mad. Others it was much less so, and it was because they had spouses who wanted their inheritance or things like this. So there was so many different cases. There were a lot. So I couldn't necessarily reference like an individual one. I think there were about 10 like major ones, but then she also referenced lots of others on the side as well. So what I found with
the one about the mum who hadn't they owned like a small holding, and then they owned a funeral parlour, or they owned something, and she thought he was going off too much on his own, so she just tried to convince everyone. I think it must have been the first or the second one.
Yeah, there were a lot of just like family members who were horrible, if I'm honest, just horrible family members who obviously just wanted their inheritance early, or like didn't like whoever.
It was easy to do though, wasn't it? All you had to do was like convince one doctor.
That's what I learned, I think. So I started it when I was on holiday in Sweden, and it was the only book I was reading whilst I was out there. So it was quite a good read whilst I was there, because I was really busy in the day and it was a non-fiction, so it was kind of keeping my attention quite well. And I really liked the sort of first half of the book. I enjoyed it a lot, and I found it really interesting because the author talks a lot about how there's so many misconceptions of just how easy it is to put people into asylums back in the day. It was ridiculously easy, especially the earliest case that she talks about, because it's in chronological order. And in the first case, I think it's literally just like you have to get one doctor to say, yeah, you're a lunatic, and then you're in. And then later on, the law gets changed and it's 2 doctors. And then later on, it gets changed again. And she sort of talks about like how the law evolves through various different cases. And I found that really interesting. I thought that was really cool to see. And it was something I'd never thought about. But with that said, I think that it got really dense later on. And it got very repetition as well. Like there was a lot of repetition as it got further on, and I felt like it was getting more and more clunky by the end of the book. So I read the whole thing, but I struggled a lot more with the second half than the first, and I found it more of a push to get through them because they were getting a bit monotonous. So each case in the early ones was sort of standing out on its own, because the very first case, it's like this man who gets put away by his family, and then he's in there and he's struggling and he's keeping a diary, and it's all this stuff, and you're like relating to him, and you're finding that he's quite an interesting character. And when he gets out, he sets up this society to help other people who go through the system and like can't get out. And I found that really interesting. And then the next one is a different person in completely different circumstances, but then you notice there's this pattern, and they're all kind of convicted in the same way, and it's not really changing very quickly. And I imagine people in the system must have been so frustrated with how slow everything changed about this. It was literally years and years and years of them like protesting and like standing up for each other. There's one later on in the book where people started to get a bit more aware of it in the public, and they kind of got wind of someone being taken forcefully to an asylum, and the whole neighborhood like mobs them and just won't let them take this person. So there was definitely progress, but it was slow progress, and I found it really fascinating, but also just a bit too monotonous by the end.
Where did it end? Like what sort of era did we get to at the end? Did it end in modern times? Or?
No, it doesn't end in modern times. It's still like, I think it starts in the early 1800s, I want to say.
It's quite early, yeah.
And then I think it finishes in the very late 1800s. So I think it spans about 100 years or so.
Okay.
If I'm correct in saying that. I could be making that up. But it definitely evolves over a set amount of years, but I'm not exactly certain. But I don't think we make it up into the 1900s. I'm not sure.
So we just had someone in our comments say, what time is it in your country? It's currently 7 minutes past 8, so you must be an hour ahead of us. Person that is at 9, random person who says it's 9 o'clock.
Yeah. Random person. I like that as a name. That's a good one.
Yeah. And someone's put, is there a trend in modern literature, like in the way writers write?
Don't know.
I'm not sure if, yeah, maybe. So I think
phrase the question a bit clearer.
The monotony set in. Yeah. I think I read the first 3 chapters. I must have read a good 150 pages or something, and I just felt like she could have written this book in a couple of hundred less pages. Like each of the cases could have been a little bit more succinct.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think her idea was to tie them all together and sort of show the progression, which worked to begin with, but then because there were so many things she needed to go through, it just got too much, and like you were being bombarded with information that probably she found really interesting because she was researching it, and it would have been something really revelationary to her. But as I'm not the person researching it, it's not my passion project, it's just something I find like interesting, it got a bit too much, if that makes sense. I felt, and like it
was totally not what I was expecting from the picture on the front. I was really expecting like some sort of look into like, because you had bits in each of the sections, didn't you, where you found out what it was like to be in an asylum.
Yeah, like
that bits I thought was quite interesting.
Really
like,
interesting, yeah.
Yeah, like especially those people that have been put in there over money and inheritance, like how frustrating, and you know, all these people that actually should be in the asylum are in with them, and how that must have felt, and how, you know, scared and frustrating. And that was the beginning, where they were all sat in this like octagonal room, and they all were sat in like these chairs in that bit I found good, but then I found all the rest of the sort of jargon and the other stuff just went on a bit long. I would have rather it had been a bit quicker.
No, I know exactly what you mean. Like those bits where they're talking about the horrible conditions, I think it's probably just a case of like we're both really twisted people and we like hearing horrible stories, because when I read a memoir, like I really enjoy a terrible tragic story.
Yeah,
and I know you do too. And like I think that was what both of us thought it was going to be, a bit more than it was, because there are tiny snippets, and there are bits later on where like people are stuck in rooms in people's houses. I don't know if you got this far, but like there were family members who would be locked away in like a room in the house, and they would be chained to like the bed.
Jane Eyre.
Literally, yeah. That's where she got the inspiration from, and she talks about Jane Eyre later on in the book, and says like basically the reason people think that it's always like maidens is largely down to Jane Eyre. Like people who have been locked away are usually associated with like the mad old wife who's been locked up because of that, but it's completely not that. And actually, more often than not, it was men who were locked up against their will because of the inheritance factor that their wives wanted or their sisters wanted or something like that. And also, Jane Eyre changed it to be not Jane Eyre. For Jane Eyre, she changed it so that it would be like relatable and more innocent, and like that's given people the misconception. So I found that interesting, and I found all the like stories of horrible bits interesting. but yeah, I think it did get a bit too wordy in the end for me.
What did you end up rating it? Was it a 3?
I gave it a 3. Yeah, so
I would have said
good, but I wouldn't have said it was like needed to be as long as it did, if that made sense.
Yeah,
been cut down a bit, and you'd still have got the overall impression. So
because I think Janet really likes it. I don't know if she's
well, I was talking to her, and she was at the halfway point, and she said, "Oh, I'm really liking it." I said, "I really liked it till the halfway point."
It'll be interesting to see.
So I'll see. Hopefully, she still likes it. But yeah, for me, it started taking a bit of a dive then.
I'm pleased I didn't finish it then. Do you know, but that's why I DNF so many though, Caitlin, because you get through them quicker than me. And so I judge what you're thinking.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then if you're kind of like, oh, it ended up being a bit rubbish, and then I'm thinking, I'm not quite enjoying this, I think, oh, well, I'll just DNF it then.
I'll just take the hit for us. It's okay.
Caitlin can talk about it. She got there first.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Well, I mean, I did enjoy it. Like, I am happy I read it because I think I learned a lot from it that I'd never thought of. But I think it could have been snappier. So like a 3 for me is like not as bad as a 3 for you. I know this. For me, like a 3 is like I liked it. I did like it. But if I'd given it a 2, that would be like the same as your 3, I think. Because 2 for me is like, it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, my 3 tends to be like, oh, yeah, it was all right. I wouldn't necessarily push it on everybody.
It's all right in our ratings, but yeah, for me, 3 is like,
because I generally don't give 1s. A 1 would be a DNF for me.
Yeah, usually for me too. I've given a 1.5 this month.
Oh,
I know. Sad times.
I normally don't get that far. I'm just like, nah, not really.
It's one of the FBO ones, so I had to finish it. I've got to finish it if it's a finalist. I feel like at least give it the chance. But anyway,
so it'd be interesting to see what everyone else gives it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Anyway, sorry, we'll go back to the books we're talking about. So let's move on to the one, this one, which is Far from the Tree by Andrew Solomon. And spoiler alert, both me and Caitlin gave this one 5 stars.
Yes.
How did you consume this? Were you audioing or I audiobooked in the end as well, mainly because it is a bloody big book and I didn't want to be carrying it around, and also I just thought I could slip in bits. It became quite apparent. So basically this book is split into chapters. I'll read out the chapters. We've got Sun, Deaf, Dwarfs, Down syndrome, Autism, Schizophrenia, Disability, Prodigies, Rape, Crime, Transgender, and then Father. So the Son and the Father chapters in here are the author talking about his own life. And then within that, we've got him researching and talking to and looking into how families work in terms of those different things. So, you know, if there's a schizophrenic child, if there's a transgender child, if there's a dwarf child, or, you know, and also, you know, what it's like to have someone with one of those conditions in their life and how it can change your life, and how the prejudices that people face, and basically how families are so different and the different things that make up a family, and how you know, people learn to become a family perhaps when a situation is different to what they were expecting. What I loved about this, it took me 2 months to listen to the audiobook, which is quite long for me, but I just couldn't consume it in more than it's about a 30-hour audiobook, and I couldn't consume it in more than an hour a day, because there was so much that my brain needed to digest afterwards. I felt like I needed to like have a break afterwards and sort of let my brain unpick it for a bit. You felt similar?
No, exactly the same. I mean, I got through it quicker than that, but only because I can listen to audiobooks at work. But yeah, I was the same. And after every section as well, I would have to pause. So like when I got to the end of each section, just to like think through, because there's so much information in this book. It's insane how well researched this is. It's so much. And I actually thought when we picked this book, I really didn't want to read it because I thought the cover was horrendous and I thought it was going to be awful. And I'm so glad we read it, even though even though we didn't want to, because I got a complete wrong conception of it from looking at the cover and from reading the back. I was like, this is going to be really dense, it's going to be really boring, but it's not, because it's personal accounts
and it's very readable. He writes readably, doesn't he? He
definitely has an approachable style, and he kind of interweaves the stories of these different families, because he doesn't always just look at one. Like, he looks at multiple people who've got
I mean, in the Prodigy one, there's at least like 15, 20.
Yeah, exactly. So there's loads of people who he interviews who've all gone through the same condition, but in completely different ways, and family situations and dynamics. And he doesn't ever, I don't think, like, fall on the side of right or wrong. I think he always sort of says, you know, everyone's different and there's different ways of doing things, and this is what their experiences are. And I quite like that he left it very open to,
not judgy.
Everyone's going to do it differently, because when you're in a situation that isn't the normal family, it's always going to be harder, whatever it might be. So,
and it could be where you live, and
exactly,
you know, your social status, there's thousands of different reasons. What type of family you are already, how many other children you've got. I want you to talk more about, because I know that the deaf one really affected you. I remember you talking about it, and then there's one that I really found quite interesting.
So the deaf one, there's a section all about being deaf, and for me it's particularly poignant. Like, whenever I read about someone who's deaf, I kind of have a slight feeling of like, God, how difficult, and thank God it's not me, in a way, because it could have been me. So I was born with glue ear, which is a condition that lots of people have and lots of people grow out of, and lots of people have like grommets and things like that to help them hear as kids. And then most people, I would say like a solid 90% of people, grow out of it when they hit like 8 or 9 years old. It's usually gone by then. I didn't grow out of it, and so I've had it all my life, and it basically is a condition where if it was left untreated, I wouldn't have been able to hear, because my eardrums don't work, they don't filter properly, so I just wouldn't be able to hear. And so because of that, I've always like known in the back of my mind I could have been deaf if I'd been born 100 years earlier or something. Then they wouldn't have had this technology. And then recently, like a week or so ago, I had an operation on my ear, so that was all very, very poignant as well. But yeah, I just felt like there was a really strong affinity, and I find deaf culture fascinating anyway, and I think that's because of knowing that it could have happened, but just genuinely it's
the prejudice. Like, you know, when you just think you're either something or you're not, you know, when you always think, well, they're autistic, or well, they're deaf, but the nuances and the prejudices within one of those societies themselves, that culture, like they were saying, if you signed in a certain type of sign language, then you would be shunned, or if you could partially hear but you were still considered deaf,
and like the
people wouldn't like talk to you in the deaf community, because you're like, well, you're not properly deaf. Therefore,
it's really controversial about whether you should have speech therapy for a child who's deaf, whether they should learn to talk with their mouths or their hands, or what the parents decide. And also like the cochlear implant thing, that was something that they were thinking possibly I would have at some point. So I didn't have it in the end because it probably wouldn't have helped, but like I knew about it already because I looked into it myself in the past. So I found that really interesting as well, because that's still really controversial today about whether you should leave someone deaf or let them get this cochlear implant and have this sort of stimulated hearing and stuff. So I just found the whole thing like completely emotional, and it really actually got like tugged on my heartstrings more than any other chapter. I mean, I found them all really interesting, but that one just resonated because of my own personal experience. I guess. So yeah, I really like that.
There was two that stood out for me in terms of that I found the most enlightening, and the one that was came first was the dwarf section. Because that's not something that I have experience of in my life, and things that you didn't think, like I just wouldn't think of, like I always think it's interesting. There was a video on YouTube a couple of years ago that someone made by putting a camera in a buggy, like a baby buggy, and pushing the buggy round. And it's really disorientating. And they're like, well, this is the view that your child has when they're sat in a buggy. This is how scary it can be. All these legs coming towards you and all these things at this height. This is what it looks like. And I remember watching it and thinking, blimey, no wonder they're crying all the time. It's really quite scary and unnerving. And I'm just thinking, I just thought to myself when he was talking about things like the things that we wouldn't even consider, like going to a public toilet as a male, if you are a dwarf going to a public toilet, like the urinal's the wrong height, or it just, those, like washing your hands isn't easy. And if you're a grown up dwarf, you're a grown up, you don't want to use the kids sink, and you don't want to be made to feel like you're a child, because you're not. And I thought that was really interesting. And the way that we view people as well, that really made me think about the way that I viewed people.
Really made me rethink, like, have I unconsciously in certain situations judged someone for being some way that they can't necessarily change? I think, I have.
Have I patronised or made
and like you
with
don't
best intentions
think about it necessarily, but now that I've read this, I think I would more, for sure. But there were so many situations where I was,
and then the leg length thing in that one as well,
exactly, another sort of really controversial practice,
go
like,
and do that to their children,
do or not, I don't know, there's no real right answer
unless you're in that situation. I think it's really difficult to know how you would react. So that was one I found that was really, which was the other one? I mean, they were all brilliant. I mean, I really did find the autism one very interesting because of working in the school and being interested in that side. And I found it very interesting when they talked about that the woman that wrote the book called Welcome to Holland. And I thought that that analogy was really clever, where like you're pregnant and she sort of compares being pregnant to as if you were going on holiday to Italy, and you get on the plane and you're packed for Italy and you're really excited and you can't wait to start your new life there and learn the language, and you've learnt most of the language and you've got the currency, and then when the plane lands, the pilot says welcome to Holland, and you're in this totally place that you weren't planning on going to, and you don't know the culture and you don't know the currency and you don't know the language.
I mean, it's a perfectly different place, but like you've got no idea what you're doing. It's
like learning a whole new set of rules. And what she sort of, I think, explains in there, or sort of says to people who have autistic children, is you can either spend your whole life regretting that you didn't get to go to Italy, or you can embrace being in Holland and try and embrace the good parts of what comes from that, which I think is meant to be a really good read. It's made me interested in going and reading that, actually.
No, me too, I agree.
I don't know if it's just like an essay or a pamphlet, or whether it's like a whole big book.
I got the impression it was a book, but I'm not certain.
No, so I did enjoy that bit as well. And I thought actually on like the Prodigies one was quite interesting.
That was interesting, because when I first read through the list of topics, I was really confused about like what Prodigies were doing in there, because I thought of all of them, probably the one that would be seen as the positive was Prodigies, isn't it? Like, it's people who are just amazingly gifted.
You think, what a great life they must have.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's the sort of stereotyping going on. And then when I started reading it and I learned about some of these kids' lives, I was like, my God, that is horrendous, because some of them were just completely shoved into things they didn't want to do, made to like practice for hours and hours and hours on end, doing the things that they were told they had to be good at, and were like missing out on other parts of their life from it. And it was just crazy. And I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is people's lives. I mean, every section I was like, I can't believe this is people's lives, because it's so foreign from what I know. But there were some seriously strong, amazing people in that book, and like so many people that I was like, I don't know if I could do that if I was in your situation. And I think that was really, really powerful. And that was the most powerful thing about it for me. And a lot of the time he sort of meets a family and then goes back like a couple years later and like checks in with them, and then goes back a couple years later and checks in with them. And I really like that too, because I felt like that
you got like, and at some points that was really sad, wasn't it, because the kid wasn't around anymore.
Exactly. So,
What was the other one? I mean, I thought as it came, I not less interested. I found the crime one was okay.
yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the ones that you could probably predict.
Yeah,
more.
a little bit.
So, like,
The transgender one was interesting. But I don't know more about transgender, but I think that's something that is on my radar a lot more.
yeah, I know what you mean.
It is more of a current topic that
It's
is
definitely more current and
talked about a lot more,
or something like that, for sure.
Down syndrome I thought was interesting.
Mm.
And actually there was things that came up in that I realized that maybe I had what is the word, generalized, like, you know, when it's, you think, oh well, Down syndrome, they must be really loving and always want a hug.
Yeah.
And actually that he dispels that when he talks about that. And
yeah,
and you know, those generalizations we make about people, whether they've come
because
from
someone looks a certain way or acts a certain way, like, you just accept that, oh, they're that sort of person, so every person like them must be like that, which is complete rubbish, of course. But like, if your only experience of meeting someone with Down syndrome is just seeing them in the street and knowing they've got it because of the way that it makes you look physically, then, and same with like dwarfism and stuff, then you do just jump to assumptions. Like, my experience of
educate yourself
is completely based on really terrible portrayals of dwarves in films, to be honest. Like, I've not seen many people,
the fact that they're always typecast as like the jokey character.
Yeah, exactly. So it's so based in like media that we see, and the media that we see is terrible for most of these groups of people, which I thought he did a really good job of like dispelling so much of that and sort of saying, well, this is the reality, like behind closed doors, this is what people are actually like and actually experiencing. So I thought that was really good, definitely.
Yeah, I thought that was good. Oh, and the schizophrenia one was interesting.
Yeah.
Like, that isn't something that I know too much about. What I actually, do you know what really scared me was the fact that I didn't realise that schizophrenia like generally comes on, I think he said at the age of 12, or like it's it's when they hit puberty, so that it can all like manifest. Because you know, you have a child and you think, okay, everything's okay, and you know, they're okay and they're coping, and then can you imagine you spend your whole like first 12 years of their life with them being a certain way, and then at 12 all of a sudden they become something different. And I felt for those parents that having to like relearn who their child is, because they're different. And it said that one of the biggest things as well is like that they would lose loads of memories and things, because the extra other bits are taking up this part of the brain. I just thought that was quite scary, that you would lose, like someone's personality would change that much. I mean, I suppose it's similar, I don't know, but maybe if someone had an accident and damaged their brain and they become a different person, personality wise, they change.
I mean, your brain is
really scary.
Definitely can mess you up, can't it? So no, there was so much in this book, though. It's so hard to like sit down and chat about it without like just constantly chatting for ages, because there's just so much in there. Like, this would be the perfect book to sort of read with a book group and like discuss one chapter each week or something. So detailed. And someone in the comments was asking whether it was a mixture of like family stuff and also research, and he does talk about like research into the condition in between.
Research and medical,
more about families, but he does definitely touch on like the actual research behind the conditions. And I think each of the chapters kind of gives you an intro into what the condition is, and then he goes into like family stuff, and then there's also other bits that he touches on as and when. It's very well researched and very emotive.
And because he is looking at loads of different people in each of those chapters, and each of those people are going through things. If one of those families is looking into a medical option, or he talks about that and he follows them through that process that they go through, you know, whether it's reassignment surgery for transgender, or whether it's like hormone treatments for that, or whether it is like we mentioned about these people that get their legs lengthened,
Yeah,
or the drugs and the things that the schizophrenic people are put on. Yeah, so he does touch on all of that.
Yeah, there is just so much in the book. It's worth buying 100%. Like,
yeah, and it's just there's so much at the back, like notes.
I would say, yeah. Then I didn't read all the notes.
There's almost no, I didn't. There's almost the same again in notes and bibliography. I mean, this must have been a lot of work.
I think he said, wasn't it like 10 years or something more than that? Maybe that he was researching for.
So, it says Andrew Solomon's last book, The Noonday Demon, An Atlas of Depression, won the 2001 National Book Award for Non-Fiction and was finalist for the 2002 Pulitzer Prize and was included in the Times list of 100 best books of the decade.
Yeah.
Blimey, I need to read that.
Yeah. I was looking into all his stuff after I read this one and I was like, they all sound interesting. But I think this one's the biggest research project he did, because it sounds like the other ones are a bit more like him personally rather than interviewing lots of people. So
oh right, okay, so this one's a bit more, yeah, because this the Guardian newspaper put on the front, this book starts out as a study of parents raising difficult children and ends up an affirmation of what it is to be human. Yeah, and I think
no, it's really worth buying if you like the sound of any of it.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say, like, I know, like, you don't have to be a parent at all.
No, I mean, I'm not.
No, because when I read it, I was like, because it's called Far From the Tree, but the little extra bit as well is parents, children, and the search for identity. And I think, that is what it's about, but you don't have to be a parent to understand.
No, you just have to have
in it.
Some sort of family dynamic to pull on. Like, that's it. That's the only thing that I think you need, is some sort of dynamic, and it can be completely different from everyone.
And they're not all families from America, are they? Excuse me.
No, I think there were a few outside of America, weren't there? Because there was like families who immigrated in and immigrated out and stuff. But I think largely it was American. But yeah, someone was asking a question saying, was there a personal reason that the author felt that they wanted to write the book? And he sort of goes into a little bit like why he wanted to write it, because the author is gay, and his family had kind of a bit of a struggle kind of getting on board with that. And I think he felt like it was something that he had to address, and like his family situation had to change, and everything sort of started to shift when he came out and told them, and they sort of started to get on board. And then I think he went into talking about something else that happened that made him realize it wasn't just gay people who had this situation of like having to do a whole adjustment when they came out. It was also anyone in a different from the norm situation. And then he sort of got interested in it and went and looked into all these other amazing topics. So
because it starts out as son, and that's him talking about that and coming out, and then it ends as father because he becomes a father, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And it talks about him and his husband, not a husband or partner, but how they decided they wanted children, and how people instantly said, people instantly, as soon as they said about adoption, and he was thinking to himself, well, what if I don't want to do adoption? Why do I have to have it doesn't have to be adoption. It could be artificial insemination to a surrogate, or
exactly.
And he talks a bit about that, and so you start where he's the son and he's coming out, and then you follow all these other families, and then it sort of ties up nicely in like a nice little sandwich, where he's the father and he's come full circle, and he can see it from the other side of being a parent.
Yeah,
which I thought was really good. I can't push this book enough.
I know, it's one of those books that I find really hard to push as well, though, because of the cover. I think it's terrible. Like,
it is a terrible cover.
Bad cover. There's one other cover as well, which is like an orange one with a baby on the front. Still not much better, I'm not going to lie, guys. Like, the covers are bad.
Yeah, the orange one makes me think of Nirvana's Nevermind, I think it was, front cover.
It just doesn't look good. Neither of them are good. Yeah. The other thing to say as well is that the audiobook, if you get that, he narrates it himself, the author. So definitely worth listening to. He's very good at narrating it and sort of gives all the right inflection, obviously, because he knows what he's talking about and has the relationships with everyone. So I really enjoyed his narration of the book, because obviously that's the only way I read it. I might buy myself a copy, but I'm so reluctant because I hate the cover.
Yeah, I
I'm
got this
so
one from the
vain.
library, and I did
Yeah.
start out reading it, and then I much preferred it. Like you say, there is some long words and terms in there, and I think because he explains it and the way he says it, it's better on audio. I think I would have,
Yeah.
and also it's heavy to be carrying around all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it would still be interesting in paper form, but I think the audiobook did enhance it because it was him. And I
Yeah.
do like when an author reads their own
course.
book and does a good job. So
Sorry, I keep yawning here.
definitely recommend.
Tired, I'm waking up. Yeah, I'd say so far, this is my favourite book that we've read for the Wellcome Prize.
Agreed. This is definitely my favourite one for sure so far. And it's definitely the only one that I've given 5 stars to. I think all the others I gave like 3.5-ish or 4. I think the only other one that I liked The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, actually, but other than that, I think the rest have been a bit mediocre, middle of the road.
I remember if I've had one really good one at the beginning. They might have been mediocre. This one is definitely my standout favourite, and I'm pleased it came when it did, because it's really invigorated me now, because I was starting to feel like, oh, we're reading these books every month and they're all about 3 stars or less, or I'm DNFing them all the time. You know, maybe books with sort of medical stuff in is just not for me, because that is the book has to have some sort of, it has to have a medical,
some sort of medical tie-in, to be eligible for the Wellcome book prize, whether it's fiction or non-fiction.
And I'm pleased that we've found this one, because it's made me quite excited for the next ones, which are
The Iceberg, a memoir by Marion Coutts.
That was the winner of 2015, wasn't it?
Yeah. Are we both reading this? I think
we're both reading both of them this time, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then the other one that we're reading, I have on audio, so I can't show you the cover, I'm afraid. That one is Bodies of Light by Sarah Moss, who is supposedly great, according to loads of people on BookTube.
Have you not read any Sarah Moss either? This is going to be both of our first Sarah Mosses.
Yeah, and I've heard lots of hype about Sarah Moss, so I'm going to be pretty annoyed.
Yeah, after the Tidal Zone.
Yeah, and like everyone just loves her stuff from the sounds of it. So I'm hoping that we do. But
I listened to the sample of the audiobook. I always listen to that because I'm not sure if I'm going to like the narrator. And it sounds really, I think it sounds really readable and really interesting. In fact, I'm probably going to start that when we get off of here.
Nice. No, well, I haven't started either of them yet, but I will.
And we're going to try and finish them this month, aren't we? Like, not this month, sorry, February.
I was like, are we? Because I haven't got long.
So February.
Yeah, February, yeah. And then
we'll get back on track now.
At the end of February and talk about those two. So,
or if we finish them a bit earlier in February, because they're shorter ones, this one, maybe we could do a mid-month talk and then try and get another lot in, because then we'll catch up.
Yeah, they announced the shortlist in March, but at the moment we have March down as being, like, if we carried on at the rate we're going, then we would have quite a lot going on in March.
And we've got the SFF Awards.
Yeah, so
we've got Neurotribes, which is about £2,000 book. £2,000.
£2,000. Might as well be.
Yeah.
It's a long one.
I feel like we need a few months for that one. I think the key for me is, I think we need to make sure, I think I wouldn't have enjoyed this if I had forced myself to get it through it quicker and ready for last month.
No.
I think I needed that time. So I think I like the fact that we're giving ourselves a bit more of a leeway in terms of
that makes sense.
The times with it, because I think it can make a big difference.
As much as it would be nice to keep on track, it's definitely makes more sense to read at our pace and enjoy them. Someone's asking what the 2 other ones for next month are about, so I will read the blurb and I will tell you. I haven't read it since we decided to actually do this, so I'm gonna just reread the blurb and I will tell you.
Oh, and thanks, someone said they like my tattoo. Thank you. I got it about 6 months ago. It's upside down. I'm showing it
up there the whole time like this. So this one, The Iceberg, it's written by Marion Coutts, and her partner, Tom Lubbock, apparently, died in 2011 from a brain tumor, but they were, I guess, he was diagnosed in 2008. And the tumor was located in the area that controlled speech and language. So he eventually got to the point where he could not speak. And Marion Coutts was his wife. And so this is her story of what it was like to be with him during the time from him being diagnosed up to him losing the ability to speak. And apparently it's written beautifully.
I've heard it's amazing.
Stuff. Like loads of people were raving about
Kirsty. I remember Kirsty reading it last year. She doesn't make videos much anymore. What's her channel called?
Don't know.
She's living in Edinburgh now. Can't remember what her channel's called. But she read it, and I remember thinking at the time, because we didn't have that much crossover of the sort of books that we liked, but I remember thinking, oh, that sounds really interesting. And I've heard lots of good things.
A lot of hype about it from like just online when I've been looking at it. So it does seem like a lot of people like it. So hopefully this one will be a good one.
And Bodies of Light is a book it's set in Victorian Manchester. It's about two sisters, and it's in a family. I think the father is a painter and the mother is a very strict evangelical. And it's about one of the daughters ends up posing for all the painters, and the other daughter, I think, it works really hard and studies and wants to become a doctor, and I'm not sure if it's like the first female doctor or something.
Yeah, I remember that now.
And it's sort of a family story, I think. So
this one's fiction, isn't it? Whereas this is non-fiction. So
and it's not a big fiction. I think it's like
they're both fairly short. I think this month, like 300-ish, aren't they? So
yeah,
I think that should be doable for sure. Which is good. February's the shorter month.
Yeah, someone's asked about whether we'd read Miss Jane from 2017. I haven't read Miss Jane. I do have it on my shelf because I was sent it a while back. But 2017 we haven't got to yet because we're working from the very first Wellcome Book Prize all the way up. This month will be 2015. And I can't remember what's on our list for 2017. But I do know
we have Mend the Living, When Breath Becomes Air, Tidal Zone, and The Gene. Because we're mad. I don't know what we're doing.
That one might not work for me because I didn't get on very well with the other one.
Which one?
Emperor of All Maladies.
Yeah, I'm not sure either because I also didn't love that one. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, we'll see how we do, or maybe we need to reevaluate.
Yeah.
I had The Gene on audiobook, so we'll see.
Yeah, that was a sort of dry one. So we'll see.
And if we don't like Bodies of Light, we might need to reevaluate titles.
Yeah, I said this when we started. I was like, if we don't like Sarah Moss, I'm not going to read all her other stuff. Just got nominated every year.
Yeah. But yeah, so that is next month.
Signs for Lost Children too, or is that me making that up?
Yeah, I think so.
So literally Bodies of Light, Signs for Lost Children and Tidal Zone. She's in like all of them from 2015, 2016, 2017. So if we don't like her, she's going to be out.
She's going to be out, yeah. But yeah, that's what. Like I don't think we've got any other questions before we go.
I just said, how are you ladies? We're good.
We're good, thank you.
I'm recovering from my operation.
You're recovering. I'm just keeping going till half term.
I've read 17 books this month. I'm on a roll.
That is really good. I think I've read 6. What are you reading at the moment to finish us off? Not my Welcome Book Prize.
I don't know. I'll have to go on Goodreads to check. I've just finished loads of stuff, so I'm confused about what I'm reading. I just finished reading The Bells. How
did you find that?
4.5 stars. Loved it. Really good fun.
The one about New Orleans.
Yeah, and beauty. Oh, it's really good fun. It's
such that on my list for next month.
Yeah, it's really fun. So yeah, that one I just finished, and then I also just finished Day of the Triffids, which I was reading with Amanda.
Is that good?
Really liked it. Definitely a good one.
Classic.
Yeah, older science fiction, but a good one. So I'm reading Iron Gold by Pierce Brown at the moment.
I've got that as well.
I'm going to an event on Monday, which has him. He's
where's that?
At the Waterstones in London. No,
it's the Piccadilly one.
Yeah, is it the Waterstones or is it Foyles? I think it's actually at Foyles. It's at Foyles in Tottenham Court. And Maddie's going with me, so we're going to that with him and Claire North. And then the day after that is Super Relaxed Fantasy Club, so I'll see you.
We'll be there.
And then,
we don't know the authors for that yet, do we?
Yeah, we do. I've forgot. I don't know any of them. I looked them up, but I don't know who they are. So maybe anyone, if anyone in the comments knows, you can let me know if they're any good. I'll tell you.
And that's back at the Hachette offices, isn't it?
Yeah, it's back at Hachette this month, so I'm quite excited.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
You might know them because you know more authors than me, I think. Julia Ember.
No.
Daniel Godfrey, who I think I know what he writes, but I've not read any of his stuff. And then Alistair Reynolds, who I do know.
I do know Alistair Reynolds, yeah.
And like other sort of adult sci-fi stuff. So
what's her name? Julia Ember?
Julia Ember, yeah.
I don't know
what she writes.
Julia Ember, The Seafarers Kiss. Ooh, we know that.
Do we? You might. I don't think I know.
Having long wondered what lives beyond the ice shelf, 19-year-old mermaid Ursula learns of life she wants when she rescues and befriends Ragnar, a shield maiden, stranded on the Merman Glacier. But when Ursula's childhood friend and suitor catches them together, he gives Ursula a choice: say goodbye to Ragnar or face justice at the hands of the glacier's brutal king. Determined to forge a different fate, Ursula seeks help from Loki. But such deals are never as one expects, and the outcome sees her exiled from the only home and the protection she's known.
Mermaids and Gods sounds quite interesting.
Quite cool. The front cover looks quite nice. I don't know if you can see it off my phone.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember something actually, but yeah, I hadn't heard of it before I looked her up. So,
she's written.
But then I hadn't heard of quite a few of the people who I've met at Super Relaxed, and then they've been really good. So, let's hope she's good. Who knows?
She's written another fantasy one as well.
Yeah, I've seen that one, I'm sure, like floating around, but I don't. It's one of those books that I've seen hauled loads of times, but I haven't seen anyone talk about it after that. So I don't know if it's actually any good or not. But
we shall see. I'm reading this at the moment.
You're reading what?
This book called Lullaby.
Oh yeah,
by Layla Slimani.
Mm-hmm.
It came out this month on the 18th. And when we met up last time at the meetup in London, Jen had a spare copy, so she gave it to me.
Oh, nice.
It's only 200 pages. I'm really struggling.
What's it about?
I think it's the subject matter. It's set in France, and it's about a couple that have 2 children, and she stayed off work when the kids have been small. And the first 50 pages just, they bring back memories for me. And then she ends up wanting to go back to work. She feels like she needs to go back to work for her own sanity. And so they decide to hire a nanny, and they look into it, and they really want to sort of work out, what sort of nanny they want. And they hire this woman called Louise, who is seemingly the perfect nanny. I mean, she just does everything. She cleans their house. She becomes so integral that they end up taking her on holiday, which is at the bit I'm at. So I don't know what happens next. But the very first 3 pages of the book is this completely horrific, gruesome depiction of a dead baby and a young girl with a knife having killed the baby, seemingly.
Nice.
Which is the baby, which are the 2 kids in this story. So you're now thinking, how do we get to that stage? And I've heard there's quite a lot of like twists and turns. And I think the nanny seems there's definitely something more to
too
her.
Good to be true. Suspicious. So is it like a crimey one then?
Yeah, sort of like a literary crimey. It says on the front, the baby is dead. It only took a few seconds.
Oh, well, I'm sure it would. It's a baby.
Yeah.
Not going to do a lot, is it?
Yeah, I do not know what's going to happen. So I'm sort of nearing the halfway mark, so I'm going to try and finish that tonight, I think, if I can. But it's quite difficult because of the subject matter.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd read that before bed myself. I'm going
to Bodies of Light as well, I think. I'm going to move on to Bodies of Light.
I might start reading some Ursula Le Guin because she died and I'm sad.
So that is sad.
Yeah, so I might just read some of her books because I'm just like in mourning, and she was great.
Yeah, was she oldish or
88? So she was getting on for sure. But she's like such a pinnacle of science fiction. Like she was the person who just completely like changed my view on science fiction, from it being too difficult for me to it being totally doable if I get the right authors. And I was like, damn it, I only discovered her last year and now she's died. She's written like a million things, so I've got plenty.
Did she write the Earthsea books?
Yeah.
Yeah, I read them. I liked them.
Yeah, I haven't read any of her fantasy. I've only read her sci-fi, but I loved it, like completely loved, like Left Hand of Darkness and The Dispossessed and Word for World is Forest. They're the 3 I've read. They're all really good.
I remember you talking about The Left Hand of Darkness. Is that the one where they're looking into different species?
Yeah, they like go down
like a genderless species,
and they've got this sort of genderless species. They're only male and female when they're like procreating together, and then they're just genderless. It's really interesting. All of her books are really interesting because they just challenge like stereotypes and science fiction. And oh, she's so good. I just need to read her.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good idea to read.
So I might read some of that, or I might just read something else. I don't know. I've got lots of books that I can choose from. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think of books,
and that seems too small.
Trying to think of books that might be nominated for the SFF Awards so that I can make sure that I've read some of them.
I think I might be okay because I've seen some of the ones coming in already. So I think I might have read a lot of them.
But if you haven't voted, make sure you go and vote.
True.
Someone put something here. Oh, yeah. Do you know what? Raven Rain books. I loved The Hand That Rocked the Cradle. Have you ever seen that, Caitlin? No. I might be showing my age now. Oh, it was such a good film.
I might be showing mine.
It was such a good film when I was younger. It was about like a psychotic nanny. Oh, really enjoyed it. Yeah, that was a good one.
No, I haven't seen that. Oh, I don't really know a lot. I try and avoid crime, if I'm honest, because I get too scared. Like I'm a proper wuss. So I know that I like crime books, but I'm also terrified by them. It's like horror films. Like I don't actually mind watching horror films. It's the aftermath of like just imagining it. Oh my God, I'm terrible. I have nightmares, proper nightmares, and I think I would get the same thing from reading horror books.
Why do you do it then? I can't read horror now. I just don't.
I don't anymore. That I used to watch, like my ex-boyfriend from years ago was super into horror films, and he would like be like, let's put on a horror film before bed, and I'd be like, oh God, no.
Why would you do that?
Then we would do that, and then I'd have nightmares, and I was like, no, this is not good. So I've just ruled out horror reading and crime reading for like quite a while. Weirdly, I find true crime easier because I know that it's like resolved by the time it's in a book, if that makes sense. Like whatever the outcome is, like it's done. Whereas like reading crime books, oh, my imagination is horrible. I hate it. But it's great for fantasy because I can visualize it all. Terrible for crime. Not good at all.
Yeah, no, I agree that I don't mind so much crime, but horror is definitely. I mean, I still have nightmares about it, and not even from reading the book. But I watched the film, and I think I couldn't have been older than 8 or 9, and unfortunately, because it petrified me so much, I think I only watched half the film, so I didn't get to the bit that was really rubbish at the end. I won't spoil anybody, but the film is pretty poor with the ending. I'm sure everyone raves about the book, so I'm sure it's much better. But I cannot see clowns now, and I can't get in the shower now where it's a shower plug that is like a grate, rather than the newer plugs that are like curved. I can't have like a grated shower. I won't tell you, but I can't. Yeah, I just can't.
I'm in the house of my own. I don't want to know. My mum's out at the cinema.
I still have and do you know what's? I mean, just this is how ridiculous it is. I watched Jaws years ago when I was, I don't know, 14 or whatever. And I'm 36 now, so that was a lot. God, that was like 22 years ago. And I still struggle in swimming pools thinking a bloody shark is going to come up the drain in a swimming pool. I mean, it's just logistically ridiculous. And yet and that never happened in Jaws, by the way. No,
okay, because I was going to say I've seen Jaws. I don't
remember. But for some reason, my brain said to me, oh, you're in a body of water. There could be sharks. Yeah. Oh, it's a swimming pool. There won't be any sharks. Oh, but there's a drain. Maybe they can come down. Yeah, I used to swim in the swimming pool when I was doing laps, and even now I can't do laps in a swimming pool on my own, because when I get to the deep end I go so fast because I just get really stressed, and then I have to get it's really weird.
No, our brains are funny. Like, they just do weird stuff. Like, I have never been so terrified of anything as I was of the mer people in Harry Potter.
Yeah.
They are horrible. Like, everyone that I knew was scared of the Dementors in Harry Potter. I was fine with Dementors. Like, I didn't give a toss about them. They were fine. They were just hooded people. Like, not a problem. Flipping mer people who like screech at you, got tentacles coming out of them, just like horrible, creepy buggers. Oh my God, I didn't like
And the thought of drowning.
Yeah, exactly. They're like tying you underwater as well. That whole scene was like horrendous. And still to this day, book number 4 and film number 4 are my favourites. Yet I'm always terrified of that bit. I'm just like, no, it's so horrible. Like, they did a good job on the design. We went to Harry Potter Studios recently. So
we did. If you haven't seen my Instagram, I posted a lot of photos of me in Hagrid's and Hagrid's sidecar.
Yeah. Good times.
It was good fun.
It was good fun. But yeah.
And we saw the Forbidden Forest, didn't we? Which we hadn't seen either of us
and
before.
The train.
And the train, because they weren't there the last time we both went.
Yeah, no, that was good. That's good fun. But yeah, mer people. And when I went round the first time round Harry Potter Studios, they had the mer people on the wall in one of the Harry Potter Studios like bits, and I saw it and I freaked out and like properly couldn't go near it. So this time when we were in there, that was where we were talking about the studio app, and like I was just looking down.
Yeah, just kept walking. Yeah, like, that was Jamie's favourite bit.
I know, he was in there for ages. He was loving it.
Yeah, he would have been there for hours and hours.
Oh, it's good fun though. It's so much to take in. If you ever come to London, I would recommend
go to Harry Potter Studios and let us know, because I only live 10 minutes away. I'll come and say hello. Yeah. All right. Have we got any more comments before we wrap it up? Oh yeah, I watched the film It. The ending was bad, but it scared me as a child as well. So you're not the only one. Oh, thanks. Oh, good. And Jo's got me scared of the ocean. Yeah, I don't like the ocean very much, which is sad, really. When I left university, I went scuba diving with a charity, and I used to scuba dive. And I'm all right when I'm on the bottom.
Yeah.
But getting into the water, I was like, I have to get in and go straight down with my scuba gear. Like, you're meant to sit at the top and then do your thumbs up and say, yeah, I'm okay, and let's go down or whatever. And I would be like, no, sorry, I'm rolling off that boat and going straight down. So, and they kind of worked around me a little bit, but I really hated not being I felt it on the bottom, even though it could be open expanse around me. I just felt safer. I just didn't like the idea of something coming from underneath me.
No, that's fair enough. Sharks coming underneath you wouldn't be.
And yet, like you say, I watch those bloody programs. I watched that Shallow whatever with Blake Lively with the shark. That is the only sort of thing that I like to scare myself with. I think because I'm just so fascinated by sharks.
Yeah, they are interesting, admittedly.
but I don't go in the ocean. I don't even go in the ocean when we go on holiday.
I'm not a big swimmer because of my ears anyway. So I can paddle quite happily. I can swim like perfectly fine. I'm a strong swimmer. I just don't like swimming because I have to wear earplugs and I can't hear anything, and then it's a bit sad when you're like the only one who can't hear when everyone's playing a game. So it's like makes me feel like I'm actually deaf, which is not what I want. So yeah, I don't like swimming very much. It's the one I say one activity, like I don't like loads of sporting activities. Let's be real. I'm not a golfer, not a footballer, none of that. But yeah, definitely not a swimmer either. That's the one I'm not a fan of.
Yeah, I don't mind swimming in a pool, but I don't like going in the sea so much, really.
Admittedly, also you get salty in the sea, which is a bit more of an issue for me. Like you come out and your skin is salty.
Everything feels a bit dry and
the sand gets stuck to you as well.
Yeah.
Ugh. What a horror.
We veered off massively from our Wellcome book prize. So sorry, everybody.
This is the stuff where normally, like, we've said goodbye to the public and we've just gone off and started chatting.
We just carried it on.
You guys here.
This is what it's like, chatting randomly. Who's an Olympic reader?
I don't know.
Must be you. You're 17 books a month.
Me?
Oh yeah, Matt Newman. Yes, The Shallows was quite good. I quite enjoyed it. Apart from the end, what was going on with that? Yeah, I felt like they'd done quite well with the CGI, and then it got to the end, and I just thought that is not a good look. But yeah, and considering she is pretty much the only person in the majority of the film, apart from the shark, she did a really good job.
It's just a woman in a shark in a film.
Well, basically, she goes to find, she's a surfer, and her mum was always a surfer, and I think her mum's died, and she's gone on this trip to try and work out what she wants to do with her life. I think she's trained to be a doctor or something, and she goes on this trip because she just feels like she needs a break, and she goes to this beach that her mum used to surf at, and it's quite a quiet, secluded beach, like it's like one of those hidden beaches that surfers look for this elusive like surf. And she goes out, and she's the only one there, and that is comes, and then the tide comes
why
in,
would anyone
stuck on this rock, and she can't get back to shore, and it's how she survives, basically. Does she survive?
I don't like the sound of that. That sounds horrible. This is the thing.
I fast forwarded a lot of it, and I put some of it on mute.
Exactly. I don't understand why people do this stuff. I'm like, why would you go out there on your own? If this was me, I'd be terrified I was going to die from hitting myself in the head with the surfboard. Like, let's be real. Like, I'm not going to go out there on my own. There's no flipping way.
No.
Even if I was confident, I'm like, nope, sharks, jellyfish. I'm more scared of jellyfish than sharks, like, to be honest. I don't like the sound of them.
No, me neither.
Or those anemones that you can step on and they spike you. My cousins have stepped on loads of them in the past. No, don't want them.
Sorry, speaking of banging, I thought maybe Jamie was wandering behind me, but he's not.
It could be in my house, I don't know, because I can't hear
now
out.
Now I'm scared. Now I'm scared.
could be anything. Quick, could be a shark coming up the drain.
Coming up the plug hole. Yeah. Anyway, on that note, shall we say goodbye to everybody?
Yeah, probably should.
Thank you for joining us. And
it's been good fun.
If any of you go and read, mainly Far From the Tree, but Inconvenient People as well, and let us know what you think of it. If you thought it was a 5-star as well, because I could talk for way more time about it, but I don't want to talk too much about it because I think we tell you all the points. It's not very exciting if you haven't read it, but I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, and if you want to join in with the ones that we're going to be reading for February, the Iceberg and
you've got a few weeks,
Delight, then join in, and we'll be doing another live show, which will undoubtedly descend into madness too.
And it'll be on your channel.
So yeah, we'll do that. I'll announce that nearer the time, whenever we figure out what we're doing. So yeah. Thanks all for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.